A blend of new ideas and old ideals. Technology news from the city and from the countryside. Plus stories from growing up on the farm. A variety of information, but always from the same rural perspective. Now here are co-hosts, Grant Nelson and Dave Nelson, with the Rural Reflections Podcast.
Welcome to the Rural Reflections Podcast. You've got Dave Nelson out in Carrington, North Dakota. Grant Nelson here at the studios of Thief River Falls Radio. He's Rural Reflections West. I'm Rural Reflections East. Good morning, Dave. How's it going out in Carrington this afternoon?
Oh, it's a real nice day today. 83, 84 degrees today is supposed to be. And humidity is down, and we had, somewhere in the vicinity of 3/4 of an inch of rain. So it's kind of a nice day today.
Yeah, I bet. Now, we've had about a half inch here, probably, I suppose it would have been 1 or 2 days ago here in the recent last couple of days we've had some. And that was nice to have, but we're still pretty short on rain, and pasture's not doing much. I noticed the wheat's not doing much. Of course, some areas around here have gotten a ton of rain, in some cases enough that it probably caused some problems out in the field. But we're at the point now where we're out there cutting alfalfa at the time when we should have cattle out eating pasture. But, of course, nobody really dares put the cattle on pasture, because as soon as you put them on there, they'll eat up what is there, and there'll be nothing to replace. And then, of course, you'll have to go to feeding hay. So a lot of people some people, I should say, are just keeping their cattle up in the lot and feeding hay and hoping something will happen here pretty soon. I know when we talked before we got on this afternoon, you said over in North Dakota in some places they are doing some hay cutting, but not necessarily for baling. Is that right?
Yeah, there's guys talking about, well, maybe there'll be enough moisture for a second cutting of alfalfa. So they're talking about maybe just clipping it and leaving it lay, I suppose. It'll mix in with the alfalfa bales, next time around, because it's so short and thin, it's hard to make a good bale out of it that way anyway. So I don't know. Maybe it's the thing that people do, just clip it off so it stimulates it to grow again or something. I'm not sure, but there's some talk of that, and there's a lot of people that are, they're looking to throw a temporary fence up in the ditches already, try and pick up a little bit of the grass out of the ditches to the pasture, and driveways, fenced off, little strips there so the cattle can get a few days out of that. So there's all kinds of different ways people are, trying to prepare for this. And I know of people that are buying hay, and I know people that went out before any planting this year and picked up a whole bunch of stover. So there's some going on with that. People have plans for that. So there's a lot of different things going on to try and prepare for what could be a real short year for feed.
Yeah, there's good reason to leave the lawnmower in the garage this year. Just fence off everything, let the cattle eat it down. And that's true, about clipping your alfalfa. I know people, including us, have clipped pasture sometimes when there was too much growth, because you want to keep it in that growth stage. So go out and cut it. And in most seasons, we had good moisture, so it would start raining or it would start growing right away. Of course, this year, clip it, cross your fingers, and hope. And the thing, of course, is that we've got another season on the way here, not too far off. I mean, I know a lot of people have already had some of their wheat start heading out at a very small stage, at a very short stage, I should say. And before we got on, you were talking a little bit about getting combines ready for the harvest season, even though, we are a little ways off, but people are going through that state right now.
Yeah, the farmer is the eternal optimist, and of course, if you don't prepare for planting, and you're not ready for harvesting, then you're not ready when it gets there. So we're fixing combines for people, getting them prepared, and there'll be something combine. We don't know what or how much, but they'll still have to use them some. So we're pretending that there's going to be a crop yet.
Well, that's a good way. Sometimes you just have to keep pretending until it actually happens. I want to move on to a little bit of a tech segment here. I saw where the state of North Dakota just put in $20 million to the Vantis system. Of course, the Vantis system, we had Nick Flum on probably 2 weeks ago talking a little bit about it. At this stage, it's just basically a license plate for drones, but there will be a progression eventually where a pilot with a remote control station would eventually be able to presumably use this system to control a drone beyond the visual line of sight. Now, we're a little ways off right now, and they're still just working at the initial stages. But I imagine the one thing about this, Dave, is when they get the quote-unquote license plate system set up, it'll include the towers and transmitters that they can use then to move on to more of a network stage, which I realize is probably in the offing, but it'll be a very important part towards being able to fly a drone beyond the visual line of sight, which will make a huge difference for people who maybe inspect pipelines or inspect utility lines, that sort of thing, because it's really inefficient. If you have to just send your drone out maybe 3,000 feet, 2,500 feet, do your inspection, then come back, land it, then go another half mile down the road or a mile down the road, and then go back a half mile and come back and then go and do the next half mile over and over again, it takes a long time. Whereas if you could get your drone to go 3 miles down, 3 miles back, you get 6 miles of space taken care of very quickly. It would make for a lot more efficiency using the drones. But they're making it, and I tell you, I got to give you guys credit over in North Dakota, Dave. Awfully progressive and awfully good at using new technology, and of course, using something you already got, which is all of those towers that are part of the North Dakota radio system.
Yeah, it's highly adopted, all of this stuff in North Dakota. I don't know what the rate is for it, but I know North Dakota, as a farming state, is well ahead of many other states in adopting precision equipment for farming with. They introduce it, you get a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit there, and it's all kind of moving towards autonomous operation of things. But
yep.
It seems like every step we take, it works out, so then we make one more step. So.
Yeah, that's what I always think too. It seems like it's all been pretty well thought out. It's all been pretty well tested, and in the end, it works out pretty well. Dave, let's take a quick break. We'll be back with more on the Rural Reflections podcast. Welcome back to the Rural Reflections podcast. You've got Dave Nelson out in Carrington, North Dakota. Grant Nelson here at the studios of Thief River Falls Radio. Dave, I'm fresh off an awfully good nostalgic visit with an old friend. Ryan Shern popped over from West Fargo this morning. He was on his way up to New Fulton for a car show, and he was also going to stop by and pay his respects at the cemetery up by Viking. So he stopped by, and we had a really good visit just talking about old times and what we've been doing and how the family's doing and everybody who's moved on and where our friends are living right now and who we've talked to and that sort of thing and what's going on. I got the pleasure of kind of explaining to him who's living where in Viking and where everybody's moved along to, because I still have a little bit of connection up there. But old friends, that's an awful good comfort as we get a little bit older, Dave, It
is, and it's really fun to just strike up conversation with someone, and it seems like it it starts over where it left off the last time you saw them, if they're, an old friend, an old acquaintance. I know for me, everybody in the Viking and Newfoundland area, my memories of them are from 1973 and prior. And so there's some real surprising things to me when I run into someone from there. And some of my friends from there I've kept up with, off and on over the years. So it's not such a shock to see them again. But it's really fun to talk about old times a little bit and reconnect.
Yeah, it really is. It brought me, it actually gave me kind of a rush. It brought me back to a time when, probably back in the 80s, when Ryan and I hung around a lot together and used to catch turkeys. And he has an old vehicle that he was driving around. He was going up to the car show. And seeing him drive out of the yard, it just brought me back. I mean, I remember him. He had a Cougar way back when. It was a Ford Cougar. And it really brought me back to a time when I saw him driving around in a vehicle very similar to that, although not as well preserved. But it was a lot of fun. Now, another thing about that I always think it makes me kind of feel nostalgic are the fairs, the county fair. And, of course, last summer we didn't have much nostalgia in that area because most of the fairs were canceled due to COVID-19. This year, it seems to me we're pretty up and going. I know registrations are going on in Minnesota, and we've covered some of the Marshall County and Pennington County Fair, and they seem to be going strong. Now, of course, last year they fell off a little bit as far as 4-H registration, but I'm hoping that we can come back nice and strong for 2021. How are things looking out there in North Dakota, Dave?
Well, the fairs are all on, it looks like. There hasn't even been any question, I don't think, about it, that whether or not they're going to be. So it's kind of business as usual as that. The one thing that may have changed, they've had some of the cattle judging events already, and I don't know if that's just some warm up and practice because of a year off, or if they're going to try and limit contact, amongst people during the cattle judging and stuff. But some of that was done early, like last week, but they're still going to have them at the fair. So I'm not quite sure I'm not sure why they did that exactly, but I know they've done it. And that's the only difference that I can think of.
Well, here in Pennington County, they're going to be doing prejudging. I think it's June 22nd. I can't remember that for sure, but it's somewhere in June. They're doing prejudging for some of the fair exhibits, and they're doing that just as a matter of scheduling, just because it's a lot easier to get some of that prejudging done before the fair starts. And also that some of these virtual things seem to have stuck with the fairs, and in cases where people can't get there, it might be kind of nice to have a little bit of virtual judging, although really that wasn't open to the public last year. But they're doing more of these things. They're bringing forward some of this technology that they had to use and probably already knew about it, but they hadn't really learned about it. They're using some of this technology as we go forward. So I just hope they have cheese curds. How about that?
Yes, I hope so. I think it's going to work out, I believe.
I think so, too. Last thing I wanted to talk to you about real quick, Dave, I've got an old garage at our place, and really it was scheduled for destruction this year, but a couple things got in the way of that, really. One, of course, was nostalgia, which always plays very heavily with me. Two, it's not that bad of a building, and to rebuild it would probably cost 5 times more than it would be to destroy it, and certainly a lot more than just putting a little paint on it and fixing up the roof. So I'm planning on doing that. There is something about old buildings, though. I mean, they bring you back to a time and a place, and they connect you also with yourself at that time when you're a little bit younger. And there's something just to be said about buildings on a farm, too, because they've been used for a variety of things. Maybe there was animals there at one time, or or maybe they stored straw there, anything. There's usually a little bit of indication on buildings. Like this building that I was looking at, saving here, which I have been working on now this week. You can see the paint marks on there where somebody did a little spray painting and had used it for a variety of things. But buildings are an important part of our history, and boy, on a farmyard, they kind of help define it, Dave.
They really do. They have a lot more character than many of the newer buildings. Most of the newer buildings are just a big building that's not got a lot of intricacies in it. I like to see a lot of these old elevators and that on the farms, that have been kept up. And some of them now are getting metal roofs put on them, which isn't quite as authentic as, you would think, but it's for longevity. They're putting metal roofs on them and painting these buildings and stuff. Nothing looks really nicer than a well-preserved older farm.
No, I wholeheartedly agree about that. It's funny you should talk about metal. I ordered metal for this barn, or this building rather, on Friday, and I bought what they had left in the lengths that I wanted, and then they ordered some more. And the difference between the metal that I purchased last week and the metal that is getting ordered come Monday morning was about $6.50 a sheet. So building material prices are definitely on their way up.
Oh, yes, I know. The steel prices have been increasing in pretty much everything, or we're being warned about the increase coming. So it's going to be it's going to be pretty much everything is affected by it.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, Dave, I suppose I better let you go in case you got to get something before the price goes up on it. And you got anything else for us this week before I let you go?
Oh, I guess not. Just real happy we got a little bit of rain and keep it coming.
Yeah. The little raindrops will show the big raindrops how it's done. That's what I'm hoping for. That's Dave Nelson. He's out in Carrington, North Dakota. This is Grant Nelson in Thief River Falls Radio. And this has been the Rural Reflections Podcast.